All right, so I want to make some changes to the model. There were some updates I wanted to do with the bolts and their UV unwrapping, as well as some things I want to add, for instance, like hay strands in his beard or underarms, that kind of thing. So want to get this into Maya, and we saved out our texture. I'm going to show you another way to do that, because the way we saved it out doesn't give us the wireframe. However, if we go edit and then edit our layers in external editor, Control P right here, click that and it brings it into Photoshop. And normally you can edit this and paint on it, hit save and go back to 3D Coat and it'll update it there. Super awesome. But for right here, we only really need the wireframe. Now you can save this as your PSD if you like, if you haven't saved it out yet. So I saved mine out, but I'm going to go ahead and overwrite it. Texture 01 here. There we go. Now I have my wireframe there. I'm going to make it pure white and then just dim the opacity a little to see it. And now I know I want to copy those bolts around, so I need more value ranges for the bolts. So right now we have the 1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, select that, and we're going to make a couple copies. I want a darker one, and I want a lighter one, I believe. So let's try that out. I'm going to turn off the wireframe. I'm going to Control C and then Control Shift V to put it on a new layer. So now I have one right there. And then with my wireframe on, I'm going to search for a spot it could fit pretty easily. And I noticed I have like a pocket right here. There's a few other spaces too if we need. But for right here, we're just going to fit one right there. And then another one kind of right next to it. I don't want to overlap any of the other UVs though. So for this one, I'm going to darken it just using the hue saturation. Maybe I'll go down by like 30. It's pretty subtle, but decent. And the other one, I'm going to brighten up a little. Same thing, I'm just going to brighten it up. Maybe by like 12 or something. So it makes a difference there. We'll probably have to paint over it, we'll see. And then I'm going to just go through these layers on top. The gradient is kind of getting on top of this before because the bleeding. So right when it saved it out, it put all these extra pixels to the empty space. So we're just going to erase that away. There we are. Now I'm going to have to start saving this out a bunch. And let's make it easier on ourselves. So let's make an action. We'll go Window, Actions. And right here I already have one made. But essentially, if we want to make this, I'm going to delete it, we'll remake it. You would hit down here, New, and then I'll just rename it Quick Save. You could put it in a set if you want, in a little folder you create with the folder button. I made one for our course. And then I'm going to set this to F3, and then once you hit record, anything you do in Photoshop from here will be recorded, and that way you could play it back easily and quickly. So right now it's recording, so I'm going to go select my document, File, Save As, and then I'm going to do a Targa. I have one saved here already, but I'm going to double click it. Save 32-bit, so our alpha is included. And then there we go. So now I'm going to hit stop. And now every time we hit that hotkey you set, so in my case F3, it's going to save a Targa with alpha included of our current image. So that's going to be really handy. So right now I'm just going to save this normally because we're on the PSD as well. And then go back into Maya. We opened up our file here. Now let's apply that texture on here so we can see it and manipulate it. So I'm going to go ahead, new material, just going to use a Fong or something. Go into our color and apply the Targa. And now if we want to see it, remember you got to press this little textured button up here. There we go. We can turn off our wireframe. And then the important thing here is going to your lighting and going flat lighting. So there we go. We have a flat light accurate to our 3D coat. image of what this guy looks like. Now, right now, we're still seeing the black, which means we have to set up our alpha. And we'll probably edit it a little, but let's get that set up so we can actually see it be transparent down there. So let's head back into Photoshop. And we have our alpha map right here, our color. So I'm going to go into channels. We're going to create a new channel. So it's going to give us the alpha. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to invert this. So everything's visible with white. Then control click our alpha channel where we want things to be invisible. So we have that selected. Go back into channels, select your alpha, and then you can control I to invert that. Now another way to go about this, which I do pretty often, is I will just make a white layer underneath and then copy using Control Shift C and then Control Shift V right into the alpha channel. So you have options there. We'll probably wind up doing that for the other parts of alpha we do. But in the meantime, we have our bolts. I'm going to just merge this down. Oops. F3, save it out. And let's go back into Maya and make those model edits. So the first was in regard to these bolts here. So I'm going to want to go ahead and re-UV, I believe the middle one to be brighter, the middle two. Let's try that. I'm going to select these. Or actually we'll do, I don't mind the color of that one. Let's do the side ones to be darker. So select them both, grab our UVs, and then we're just going to pull this over and line it up. So now when we look at it, nice. It's subtle, but this one and this one are darker. This one, however, looks too dark to me now, so I'm going to move that one back. So I'll grab that one. Put this over here. There we are. There. So that rolls off and it looks a little more believable. Now, let's try moving these onto the head. So I'm going to save this before I forget. And then grab these. Let me get myself some space here. And place them up there. So I'm going to copy this. And let's just line them up on his head. And if we like how they look, we'll keep them. If not, well, it was worth a shot, right? And then we could mirror the rest of these. The colors are going to be off right now because we didn't UV these to the colors we want, but this will do the job in the meantime. Okay, it looks pretty cool outside of the value. Outside of the value, I think that's looking pretty cool. So I'll make sure I space them, space them decently enough. Okay, get the other ones here, and we'll put one in the middle here. It doesn't have to be perfectly lined up either. You can have as much character as you want in this. That looks pretty evenly spaced. Let's take a look. That's pretty cool. Gives it a little more tactileness. Let's try changing the color, because right now I'm not entirely sold. I do like the idea though. So let's see. I'm going to grab this one and the back one. Grab their UVs and move them over. Let's try moving these to the light one. Right? Okay. Color-wise, it's fitting better. Let's move this to the dark one. And I'm just using vertex snap there by holding V to line those up easily. Nice and quick. There we go. So now we didn't paint these all exactly, you know, the lighting that was there, but it's pretty close. I might lighten up the light one for those ones just to settle it a little closer, but it does the job and it kind of fakes it to following the lighting that we had painted in, right? So we got the extra detail. I think that makes a nice difference having the model pop out a little there. So now what we can do, we can just hop right back in Photoshop real quick and lighten up that one color. There we go. So save it. Photoshop. Select this, and maybe I'll try curves instead. So I can select that and deselect the one I don't want. And then let's try curves. Just brighten it up a little more. And then F3. Just pressed it right there on my keyboard. There we go, a little brighter. Okay, I don't want to go too crazy with it. One thing I'll do here is maybe I'll rotate this so the highlight is a little more straight. Like that one. Not necessarily, it's kind of like preference thing too, because now the polys are facing different angles, and sometimes you don't want that. Sometimes you want this to, like where the point comes to a V, you want to match it on each of them. I kind of like this where it was horizontal with it, but let's try it real quick. And this is a purely artistic choice that you can, like, if you want it to go parallel, that's fine. Otherwise, you know, it's up to however you want to feel it out. It's a bit different in each of mine. There we go. I'm feeling like it doesn't really make that much of a difference compared to what I was thinking. So I'm going to undo just to take a look. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. So I'll keep it. Thought it might be like too noticeable, but honestly, doesn't change too much. Sometimes having the polys follow each other will kind of sell it a little more, but we good. Okay, so now the other thing we wanted to do, right? We got the ones on the bolts on the head, and we changed the colors of the one over here. I wanted to duplicate these so they're on both sides, so I'm just gonna separate this real quick and mirror it. Yeah, I gotta duplicate. There we go. Now you could just use Maya's mirroring tools, that's fine. I just have a method that I typically use to mirror just by duplicating. All right. Cool. Now we got them on the head. And then we got them on the shield. Now let's get some hay strands coming out. And so to do this, we're gonna have to go in Photoshop first and make some, and then we'll UV map to that. But let's get our alpha hooked up here too. Let's make sure it's in our file. So I'm going to double check our target here. It is. So in this case, in Maya, let's see here. I'm going to grab that texture and I'm going to plug it into the transparency too. Sometimes it'll do this automatically. There we go. That might have just been using it. So what I'm going to check real quick in options, in your viewport options, change your transparency from object sorting to something like depth peeling. So I'm going to select that. Oops. Select all this. Grab my material. Let's see. And yeah, we'll have to paste it in here. So I'll grab the option or the material again, pop it in there. So now they're in both color and transparency. And now you see the grass is see-through. We have some artifacting right there, so we'll have to double check that around the grass to make sure it's alphaed properly. But otherwise, it's now working. That's cool. That's real cool. Same with the shirt and stuff, where the cuts are. I like it. I like it. Back Photoshop, and let's take a look. So around here, we could already see there's some artifacting. So we can clean that up, but I'm actually going to clean it up in here. And we're going to do that technique where we just have it in here. So I'm going to make a folder called alpha and then do a white layer underneath. And then from here, I can just paint this black. So I'll grab a black brush, paint that in. And I could also use my wireframe so I know exactly where the bounds are. And I could always change the UVing later if I want. I'm going to paint this all black, and then I'm actually going to extend this out even more because I'm going to use this space near us to do the hay. There we go. So let's see here. So what I'm essentially doing now is I'm going to paint more areas that I want to be transparent. And so anything that's not already UV'd here, like these are our UVs, right? I'm just going to paint black all around that. And I'm going to use this space to paint some hay, that kind of thing, just like pieces that could float on their own. So actually, I'll just use a selection tool here. So as long as it doesn't overlap anything, we won't have anything else accidentally turn invisible. That should be enough. So I'll make all that invis. And then we might have some other spots we can use if we need more later, like there's some gaps here and there. But we should just be able to use this. And then I'll make sure it's not coming too close to other UVs. There we go. So I'll hide this, and I could use that kind of as a reference. Everything that's black there, I can paint over, essentially. With our alpha here, we traced around that. We're going to do something a little different for how we're adding these. I'm basically going to paint on top of the black here, and then we could use that paint as a mask to cut out from the black that we painted, or we could just kind of turn that white and use that as well. You'll see. So I'm going to put another thing on top. I'm just going to call it hey. And then let's just paint some. We're going to grab the same colors as we got from this guy, and we're just going to kind of go at it. We're not going to be too crazy with this. Something simple that we could put around his face. right? And this will likely be trial and error. We'll put some down, test it. If it looks good, keep it. If it doesn't, edit it around. So let's start. We'll just have some dark. So essentially, like, what do I want to see overlaid on top of stuff, right? So maybe I have one that's like that. Maybe there's one that's just a couple. And I'm putting them sideways here as well. Right? Maybe there's something that's just 2 strands. I'm giving myself like a bunch of choices here. Maybe there's one that's really messy. And then maybe there's just a couple longer ones. Now I should be doing this with a non-opacity brush, something that doesn't have opacity set to pressure sensitivity. Might cause some, it might help to do that, but that's okay. I'm gonna roll with it right here. And we'll paint over this with lighter colors as well. So I'm basically making a mask with this. We probably don't need this much, but we have the room, so I'm just kind of going for it. All right, let's start with that and see what else we need. So I'm gonna use that as a mask by making a new layer and clipping to it by holding Alt. And now I'll use my regular opacity kind of brush and just kind of paint on top. So we don't even have to do this yet technically, but like we could test and see how it looks on there first, these shapes, but this will only take like a second. So I'm just kind of getting some color in there. Okay. So how do we get this to alpha now? Well, if I turn back on that layer, we could still see it all there, but I want that to be white, right? So one thing we could do is we could select it all, and then in the alpha here, I can mask it out. So I'm gonna move this stuff underneath again, and let's just make sure we can see it. So right now I can only see those. If I get rid of it, I can see my original stuff. I want to be able to see both. Let me invert this mask. There we go. So I masked it out, and then I used the pixels we painted as a way to make the black turn to white in the areas we want it to be visible. So we're using masking. So now I can grab this, copy the entire thing with Shift Control C, and then paste it into our alpha spot. Now we have updated alpha. I could turn this off. We could see our colors. One thing we want to pay attention to though is the background of this is green. And so sometimes when the edges of the alpha like bleed through, you're going to get some of that green underneath. So to help prevent this, I'm just going to do another layer underneath our hay layer and just paint it like a dark brown. So that way, if we do see through it, it will be the right color. And you can kind of get creative with this sometimes, depending on how much it shows through. You might see, you might want to use like a black instead if you want like a dark outline. It's really good for when you're doing like foliage and stuff. So I'm going to save this. And let's go and try to put these in Maya. So let's just get ourselves a plane, or we could use one of these, right? I'll just duplicate this. Let's duplicate that, and let's see how this works, right? So we're going to grab our planes here. Probably don't need to be this shape or anything. We could probably split those up, actually. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to cut each of these, and we'll just try to get our stuff here. There we go. So that would be one of them. You can see how it just kind of is visible. Yeah, there we go. This one maybe is down here. We'll fix that in a second. And so these, we could actually, let's just straighten them out. Make it easier on ourselves. There we go. All right, I'm going to break these apart here too. And I'm just matching the UV shapes a little better, so there's less distortion. This one we could probably actually just add ourselves an opportunity to fix it. Okay. So let's try that. Let's try placing it around his face now. So I'm just straightening this out a little more. Okay. So I wanted it in a couple places. I wanted his arms. I wanted it maybe a little on his face. And I feel like we don't need a lot. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to close this stuff. Get some room here. Let's close that. And let's grab these, right? So this is all we're really doing, is we're going to take it and try to find a spot where it doesn't look stupid. Or if it does look stupid, at least it's stupid in a way that we enjoy and find endearing. You know, it might be too big, right? Might want it to bend a little. We could do that too. Like maybe I want that one to just bend a tiny bit. I don't want these to be like super high poly or anything. But maybe if you want them to curve in space, like that's an idea. You don't have to do that, obviously. But feel free to not limit yourself to the geo that you started with, is my point. So maybe we don't even need a lot. We just need something to break the silhouette in some spots, right? So maybe this is down here. Just need something people look at it and they see a little more happening, right? That's pretty cool. We could always clone these and do multiple. Overlay them on top of each other. Get a little more depth. And so there's a little going on there. Yeah, I like that. Let's try one of these maybe under his arm. And with something like that under his arm, here, I'll show you. Let's move this over there. Flip it around. Right? That's funny. It's a little big, but it kind of works. But what we can do instead, I'll shrink it down and let's make it follow the shape a little. So I could add a cut and then move it, and so it has like a slight curve to it that way. That might not be necessary in this case. I was thinking if it was coming out around his arm, but I kind of like this coming out of that spot right there. Right? That's kind of cool. Does exactly what we need. But maybe we want one more, right? Let's duplicate it. And then I will have it like I was originally thinking, coming out around the arm like that. There we go. So it's getting a little busy. There's a bit much, but I don't hate it. But I'm going to shrink one of them a lot. Maybe I'll face it towards the bottom more. There we go. That's pretty funny. And now we can use this one in a similar way, right? Grab a copy of that. Maybe I could stretch this one. That's pretty cool, because now our silhouette is no longer completely static. Now I'm looking at this. I kind of want to shrink his waist a little too. I might try that. We're going to have to keep everything together though. So let's see. I wonder if there's an easy way I can do that. Make him a little thinner. Maybe, maybe not. I don't necessarily need to. I'm just looking at the concept like, kind of liked it. And then let's get a little coming out of the bottom of the belt. And then you can mirror this and then edit it however. Give it a little asymmetry, right? Because the rest of him is symmetrical. So just having a couple of these that maybe aren't symmetrical would give it a little more interest. There we go. Cool, cool, cool. right, save. I have some painted there, so maybe we'll actually put one there too. One that comes out. Give it some depth. Give it some depth. And then from that angle, you actually see it breaking off from the body a little. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's a little low res, but we're going to forgive it. Right, and like that's pretty cool seeing it like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to separate this side. I grab all these. And then I'm going to duplicate them. I'm going to break them off. And then see where, here we go. There, that's on both sides. Cool. Combine those together. And then maybe, like I said, move some of these. One thing I could do right off the bat, instead of moving the geometry, is grabbing that and flipping it in here. Right, so let's see, modify, flip. Step back. So that way it's just slightly different from the other one. Maybe I'll put it something like that. Or just rotate it. Oh, I forgot a line there. Where we go back and fix that pretty easily. Okay. First things first. So at this point, just pretty much finessing the shapes. I got his little hey face beard. And you could see how much life that added overall, I think. You know, just breaking from the static sharp shapes to kind of giving it more like a fuzzy feeling, right? It sells the material. Didn't take a lot from us to really get that either, right? We didn't like go ham on anything. We just added a little alpha, painted in a little, not even that much, and it feels good. You know, you don't have to go too crazy. I kind of liked it when it went down further. At this point, though, you can kind of let yourself go nuts. You got to rein yourself in. I don't know, I'm talking to myself here. Just trying to make it a little less symmetrical, that's all. It's something I doubt, you know, anyone's really gonna notice when they're looking at it, but sometimes I let myself get a little too into it. Cool. So let's see if we could do something about the waist real quick. It might be nothing. We'll see. So let's see if we want. Do we want to put any more of these? Yeah, why not? Yeah, it doesn't cost much. All right, so with the waist, what we'd want to do, I want to select all the pieces that would be involved. So that would be those three. And let's use a lattice, right? Let's grab this as well. And then we're going to go in to, I believe it's an animation, deform, lattice. And so right here, divisions, I'm going to do, well, we'll find out. So right now I'm just going to try 242, apply it. There we go. We can edit it now over here and see what it really looks like. So if I did 5, I guess really wanted 5. So I'm going to grab this, and it's going to do like a soft select on everything. Right click, lattice point, grab those. See? And then boom, immediately lets us soft select and change the whole thing. We can even move it up and down, and it's going to smoothly edit it. It's really useful. So now one thing though is we might want that fuzz to come along. That's an easy enough change, I guess, afterwards. Our hay. So let's see. So we got that. And now getting out of it. If I move it, it's weird. It moves where is it? Kind of move the whole thing. Let's see here. So do I want that? I could delete it and watch it go back to how it was. Kind of like the skinnier one. Maybe we don't want that skinny. Let's see, delete. I just like the shape. It's more of a V shape, kind of matches what's going on with his neck. Whereas this is more just like cylinder. I feel like this is a little more interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that lattice point again. Maybe not go as hard, and then maybe we flare this out a little more. So showing you this, 1, because I wanted to make that change, but 2, because I think it's a really important tool to have at your disposal is the lattice, because it lets you make these kind of big changes really a lot more simply than you would by selecting each individual thing or trying to get soft select on everything. I think it really helps. So maybe we have like more of an hourglass on the bottom. just for the back one. And see, so you get that level of control, and then you can determine how many points show up via that menu when we first created it. This comes down to a point, and then that one in the back. So, all right, let's save it. So here's the thing. So that was like before, after. I could leave it like this if I want, but if I want to bake it in, I need to, at least as far as I know, grab, edit, delete by type, and I think you have to do the full history. Let's try non-deformer. I'm pretty sure it's a deformer. Yeah, so that's if you want to do other history here. Delete by type, history, and it should. Oh, I have to select my objects here. I could have done delete all by type history as well, but this if you just want to do the selected ones in case you had like animation stuff going on. You could probably just do delete all by history and grab that without any problems. So there we go. I'm going to pull these in just a slight amount to match where they kind of were before. Not that it makes a huge difference, but yeah, no. Because this one's like floating now, so there we go. That way they're still seated properly. Sweet. All right, it's Fuzzy Boy now. Okay, there we go. Let's see, was there anything else I wanted to try right here? Otherwise, it'll be time to do some edits in Photoshop. Color-wise, we'll play around with some things. We'll play with our curves and levels and just do that final 5-10% on top of this guy. So I'm going to save it here. I'm going to make sure my Photoshop is saved properly. Got it in there. Got our alpha, got our wireframe. Okay, save. Save our targa. Okay. All right, we'll get into Photoshop and we'll do some stuffs. All right, back here in Photoshop, just had a couple of quick things we wanted to do here. Nothing too crazy. Now, first was some tinting on the arms, essentially, maybe the post itself, just to differentiate the wood a little from the, let me go back to Maya real quick, differentiate the wood a little from his like body and head. Nothing too crazy different because I still want to keep the colors roughly the same, but to pull it apart a little. And then the other thing was to boost the contrast overall. And so let's see here. First thing, I'll add a hue saturation, and then I am going to select, let's see, let's turn on our wireframe. I'll select the arm. And then I guess we'll select the post as well while we're here. And I'm going to go ahead and, ooh, what's intersect? I normally click it and hit Control I to invert. And then I'll deselect and then I'll invert that again. So you could kind of skip this by having your selection first and then adding your hue saturation, and it'll basically do what I just did here, but that's another kind of roundabout way to do it. So let's see. I want to, let me zoom out a little, change the hue a little. So I guess we'll go a little more towards orange, and I want to desaturate it and darken it slightly. So let's see. Let's try around there. So you can see it goes from like the yellow to a more kind of desaturated red. So I'm going to hit my hotkey to save it, and we'll go over. And okay, maybe that's a little strong. I'm not sure. It definitely differentiates it. Let's go back and I'll toggle it back off so we can see it again. Save it back and see, yeah, this is kind of hue-wise closer to here rather than here. I still wanted the weapon and helm and shield to be kind of different. They're kind of matching the belt, but maybe the arms are like an in-between. So let's turn that back on. maybe I do a little more color and saturation. We'll just tone it down just a little. All right, let's try that. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't mind that. And this gets darker down here anyway, which allows us to draw our eyes upwards. That's pretty cool. And now, last thing, adjustment-wise, I want to do is curves layer. So I'm actually going to make a new layer, holding shift and clicking the folder, a new group, I mean, and then just to have our adjustments in, I'm just going to call this adjustments. That way I can turn them on and off at the same time fairly quickly. The curves I'm going to do to the entire texture, so I'm just going to click curves. And I know in this case we have a lot of darks, and we can see our kind of histogram right here. I want to bring up some of the lights. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab a point maybe around here, pull it up, and then another point here just to settle those values back to where they were. So we can see it right here, kind of brightening all our brights just a little to give it a little more range. That's pretty nice. It's popping out a little more because I painted it pretty low contrast, which I typically do, and then we'll brighten stuff up afterwards. So let's save that, take a look. Okay, the face might be getting a little too much, but not too much, I don't think. It definitely draws your eye there, but I'm going to knock it down just a little. But otherwise, I think that's working pretty well. Let me adjust it just a little, play with it, maybe pull this one up a slight amount as well. And then I'm going to go in with a soft brush and then just paint out some of the face here. There we go. So just really subtle. You can see in the mask just a little bit, but it's still being affected overall. So let's try that, save that. Back to max. Yeah, that feels pretty good to me. So again, I'll go to the before. It's easier to see in the 3D. Turning these off. Still cool, but doesn't have as much pop. And then it's just little stuff on top that can just bring it out a little more. You know, you did all the work, you did all the detail, but sometimes you just want to tweak those knobs and give it a little more. There we are. And now there's one thing I noticed before that I want to go and touch up. And let's find out where that was. I believe it was right here. What's this layer? Okay. That is the background. So I'm just going to name that. And then I'm going to go turn off my adjustments. And I believe it was right here that this trim wasn't following all the way down. And I just want to get that in place. I'm not going to worry too much about the inside of it. You could paint it up as much as you'd like. People aren't really going to be seeing there, so I'm not too concerned. But yeah, this piece, silver trim, I forgot to follow it back up. Now this should be pretty easy to kind of touch up. So we'll go in here. I'm just going to select it. And then paint that in. It doesn't have to be perfect. It'll be just enough to make the difference. Assuming we painted it in the right spot, because we're no longer painting directly on the model. Have it update. Now, did I even paint in the right spot? We could double check. Make sure I saved it first. Okay, so it might not be the right spot, so let's check the UVs. So it is, but I need to go up here. That's right, because I split the coat. So I just painted up higher here. That makes sense. On the opposite side. So now that we're aware, I know I could put it on this side. And I'm going to try to keep the same level of thickness. All right. That should be it. There we go. And so now, that way it just looks like it fits with the rest of it. At this point, what I'll usually do is I'll take a look at the texture in 2D, and you could also do this by bringing up the texture view in 3D Coat. I just like the Photoshop tools a little more. And you can go in and paint on top if there's anything that you feel like in 3D you weren't able to hit right, or like you notice like, oh, okay, I want to maybe, here, I'll add another, I'll just call this layer extra or something, or you polish or whatever you want to call it. And like, so right here, I see that edge from when we painted it earlier. Maybe I don't want that to be as hard of an edge. I can go in and just paint on top of that, soften it up, right? Or if there's other parts of the texture that you're like, oh, I want to touch that up a little more, this is a good opportunity for that. So I'll take a minute, I'll just look through, see if there's stuff like this. I want to soften that edge. Maybe I'll go in and just give the edges a little extra, stuff like that. Make some changes, decide if we like them or not, and move on. Do some little bounce light from the wood on the inside just to unify it a little. You know, give it a shot. We'll see how it looks in a second. Stuff like that. So now I can toggle that, and you can see, just smooths it out, gives it a little more dimension. And this kind of stuff is optional. It really depends how far you want to take it. I'm not going to go too crazy with it right here. But it gives you another opportunity to kind of go in and touch stuff up. So now when I come over here and look at this again, still got something there. I don't think I saved it, that's why. So let's go back. I'll hit my save button. Or we could actually see a little of that in there. So let's go ahead and just remove it a little more, since it's the thing I'm showing you. Maybe I'll even take a little brighter brush. So yeah, maybe that'll look good, maybe not. Go back in here, and now we see it's smoother because I saved it, but then I also painted in a little brighter highlight on top. So going in and popping in stuff like that can always be fun. But there we go. All right, now what we want to do is show this guy off, right? I like to take pictures. You could take them here in Maya if you like, by turning off your grid and changing the background color, or just using this background color and selecting it, right? Like in Photoshop with your magic wand tool. One thing I might do is like if you want to just take pictures in here and you don't care about going into another program, or you don't have Marmoset or whatnot, you can go ahead and I believe it's in settings, color settings. Let's double check. 3D views, background. And then what you can do is you could click. So right now I'm just using I'll just copy this 365, but you could get a really offensive background. A lot of times it's like a magenta. Watch your eyes. Yeah, like that. That way your color picker will work really well against that. Sorry about that. I should have warned you more in advance. So yeah, that's one way to do it here if you don't want to, or you can't go to something like Marmoset. But otherwise, I want you to save your guy out. Save it. You could do it all as one piece as a FBX or OBJ. I'll probably try OBJ first. And then we'll go into Marmoset and set the material up and take some pictures.